and welcome to the Narrowing Path, Walking the Spiritual Walk. My name is Steve Van Eiderstein. Thank you all for joining me again today as we go through and we do today's daily reading from James Allen's Daily Meditations. This has been a pretty interesting first couple days. Yesterday's was an interesting one. I enjoyed it. Got me thinking about a lot of things. So I'm grateful to have read it and kind of walked through it with y'all yesterday. So definitely interesting start to September, and I like it when I get thinking. It gets me in a place of learning, right? That's and that's a good place to be for me anyway. That's where I like to be, teachable and um being able to grow a little bit. That's the whole point of this thing. So um looking forward to today. So this will be fresh to you and fresh to me, meaning that this will be the first time that I hear it or read it right here on this podcast with you. So you'll get my genuine response, reactions, observations, and what I relate to about the reading. So here we go. This is September 3rd's reading from James Allen's Daily Meditations. A man is great in knowledge, great in himself, and great in his influence, in the measure he is great in self-control. Wonderful as are the forces in nature, they are vastly inferior to that combination of intelligent forces which comprise the mind of man, and which dominate and direct the blind mechanical forces of nature. Therefore, it follows that to understand, control, and direct the inner forces of passion, desire, will, and intellect, it is to possess the destinies of men and nations. He who understands and dominates the forces of external nature is the natural scientist, but he who understands and dominates the internal forces of the mind is the divine scientist. And the laws which operate in gaining a knowledge of external appearances operate also in gaining a knowledge of internal verities. The end of knowledge is use, service, the increase of happiness of the world. I really love the way this one opened up. It's very appealing, maybe is the word, or encouraging, right? Because a man is great in knowledge, great in himself, and great in his influence in the measure that he is great in self control. It's always funny to me to read these ones, not because I don't think they're true, not because of any other reason, but whenever we talk about these types of achievements and accomplishments, those are always a side effect of living right. Like if we read this, a man is great in knowledge, great in himself, and great in his influence, in the measure he is great in self-control. To read that, like, well, I want that. That would be my goal. It could be anyway, right? So we have to be careful with those things too. Like if we start changing our behaviors with the expectation of the goal being always something that we're gaining, right? Then it's still a selfish goal. It's still self-centered, right? And all of us start that way. I want to be clear, but these things can't be the focus of what we're going for because it's still us thinking about us, right? That's still me thinking about me. If I want to be great in knowledge, I want to be great in myself, and I want to be great in my influence. So I better learn how to control myself. That's true. But that self-control really comes from being of service. That self-control really comes from living a spiritual way of life. And it's not done because we want these achievements or these um, aggrandizements. I don't know if that's a correct use of that word, but We do it because it's the right thing and it's the right reason. We do it because it's just the right thing to do. Not because, well, if I do this, this will get me this. That's selfish. That's a selfish practice in spirituality, let me tell you. All of the benefits and blessings we get from this are all side effects. They're all indirect achievements from just living a spiritual way of life, from just living in a um, Christ-like path, that ideal we're striving for, right? Like we go towards this ideal and then we get these things as a side effect. It's pretty amazing. But we have to make sure we're clear on that. That self-control piece. Self-control is best communicated when we are talking about spiritual principles and how we behave and disciplines we have. So it's a great opening line though, because it is these observations about great men and over the course of history really are true at the end of the day. So let's go to the main body of this. Wonderful as are the forces in nature, they are vastly inferior to the combination of intelligent forces which comprise the mind of man and which dominate and direct the blind mechanical forces of nature. So that's an interesting thought, right? Because man is inherently part of nature, but we've been blessed with this little piece of God, this little flame of free will, right? And we get to interact with nature and exert our will on nature in a lot of ways. Some people think that's the wrong thing to do, to be fair, but that's what we're talking about here. We are blessed with the ability to integrate nature and into our lives for a benefit to both. It should be really at the end of the day. So it's acknowledged. So we're acknowledging here that nature is incredibly powerful, but the intelligent forces which comprise the mind of man are more powerful, right? Though we do participate in nature, and though nature will take its course, and Mother Nature will be here before us and after us, it's part of that eternal. We're supposed to take the physical, we take the physical world we're in and we use it positively in a constructive and productive way. I mean, a lot of the practices today don't necessarily line up with that statement. Um, we use our intelligence to wreak havoc and destroy things instead of harmoniously and effectively create. So I think that's a disconnect. It's a selfishness we have in society. Um, but therefore, there's some superiority going on there. You know, Mother Nature will always win with, like I said, typhoons and hurricanes. And well, maybe one day humans will be able to predict these with such accuracy and efficiency that we can take care of them. But there's a risk involved with that, I think. So this is an interesting line to start it with. That's for sure. So, therefore, he goes on to say, though, it follows that to understand, control, and direct the inner forces, so we're talking about the internal forces of a human being, of passion, desire, will, and intellect, is to possess the destinies of man and nations. And that's true. We can destroy this planet quite easily, right? So, when we talk about doing the inner work to control that passion. So we're talking about extreme emotional binges and highs and feelings, right? Desires, what we want, what we covet, um, our will, what we are choosing to serve, really. and our intellect and what we're choosing to think about, right, is to possess the destinies of men and nations. When we can harness those things, it's a very powerful thing, right? When we can dedicate them to the positive nature of things too. I was reading someone else today. It was Emerson. I was reading Ralph Waldo Emerson, and it was his essay on self-reliance. And there was a bit in there that I was reading. He was talking about just how great men have whole almost religions devoted after them, or have such a significant impact that the organizations formed after him um, still remain. Right? And he was talking about Luther. He was talking about Christ. He was talking about um, the leader of the person that formed the Quaker religion, a house for friends, whatever it's also called, Methodists. These are singular people that had control and effectiveness to their inner forces for good and to be of service to this spiritual way of living. And it made such an impact that there's entire religions and spiritual denominations devoted to them. Right? These are individual people that have so many things that have come in tow because they had this control. They had the direction of their inner forces. When you think about that, that's pretty powerful. It's incredibly powerful, actually. And now the second paragraph in the main body of this. He who understands and dominates the forces of external nature is the natural scientist. So whoever takes their powers to just kind of go and exert their will over nature, that's the natural scientist, right? We have a lot of people that play in that field. But he who understands and dominates the internal forces of the mind is the divine scientist, right? So when we try to understand, it's the same as saying understanding. Where people that try to interact with nature and have an understanding of nature are natural scientists. People that try to um, understand and dominate the internal forces are divine scientists, because that's really us trying to open up that pathway to the God of our understanding, or that power greater than ourselves. We're trying to expand our knowledge of the spiritual world and to be of service to a higher cause. And that can be, some call Mother Nature too. Let me make sure we put that in there. That creator, the Mother Nature, that all flowing energy that people like to interact with, right? So, but that is the divine scientist, because we're exploring God, as I say. And the laws which operate in gaining a knowledge of external appearances also operate also in gaining knowledge of internal verities. I want to look that up real quick here. So it's Verities for those listening. So verities, a true principle, especially one of fundamental importance, says Oxford. So the laws which operate in gaining knowledge of external appearances operate also in gaining knowledge of internal verities. So these internal godlike disciplines and principles, that's important. That there's so many similarities that we don't know are there, right? So many spiritual so the many of the laws that govern the natural and material world around us can honestly in at least similarly, if not exactly, be applied to studying spirituality in some cases. In most cases, almost all cases, from everything that I've seen. And so the laws that are here are the laws that are there, and we can use the same laws to gain a knowledge of internal verities, those moral principles we're talking about. I like that word. Hopefully, I remember it. So, and now the last closing quote here. The end of knowledge is use, service, the increase of happiness of the world. So, what we're saying, the end of knowledge is use, service, the increase of happiness of the world, right? So, when we get these spiritual knowledges, spiritual understandings, these principles, these disciplines, these laws, these things that are all around us, practiced in every capacity, right? That is the end of knowledge. And we use that. We take these things that we've come and been blessed with to understand, right? It says end of knowledge here, but I believe it's always learning, right? Like the end of knowing one principle would be to know virtue of the virtue honesty. So whenever we find these understandings, we use them, we be of service to others with them, and that results in the increase of happiness of the world. What a blessing. What a blessing that is. That's what we use this stuff for, to create joy and love. So, all right. Well, there we go. That's what we'll end for today. And a great reading. It's I this is he's been changing it up lately. Or they well, I guess I should say Lily Allen's been changing up the way she's put these together. So this at the beginning of the month, it definitely shifts gears. So, but August did this same thing, and I'm interested, and it finished so strong, absolutely fantastic. So and this one's got a lot of great stuff coming out of it in the first couple of days, but and I'm sure to follow it'll follow with even more um, things that'll get me going. So I'm really grateful for it. So thank y'all for joining me today. And until next time, thanks.